Gamla!
Adonai Oriveishi Mimi Hira Adonai Meos Chayai Mimi Echad Ikrov Alai Mereim Le'echol et Besari Tzerai ve'oivai li hema kashalu ve'nafalu Im tachaneh alai machaneh lo ira libi Im takum alai milchama bezot ani voteach Adonai Ori Achad she'oti meher Adonai ota akesh Shivti b'avet Adonai kol yamei chayai לחזות בנועם אדוני ולבקר בהיכלו.
Led rebellion in 4 BC when Herod the Great died, and he thought that was our chance. Then I told you how Varus and his legion came down over that hill and took this town and razed it, burnt the city, and killed all fighting men and put all women and children into slavery. That must have loomed large in young Deirdre's mind as he grew up on the hill overlooking, looking straight across. But 10 years later in AD, there's another leader whose name was also Judah. I mean, lots of these people had names that are resonant of the Maccabean period, 2 centuries earlier. Judas Maccabeus being the most famous name. But now we're going to roll forward a few decades to the Great War. There is unrest through that whole period from AD 6 through to 66. Jesus is off the scene in the early 30s, but tensions rise and a full-on war breaks out with Rome. I told you also the story when we were at Sepphoris of Jotapata, the town over the hill to the north, where Josephus had fortified that town as well as this one, and then he surrendered to the Romans and said to the Roman general, the commander of the Roman armies, the top general in the Roman Empire, I think you're going to be the Jewish Messiah, and that's how he got out of being killed. You're going to be the ruler of the world. And that lucky guess became true. Because sure enough, in just a few years, Vespasian was indeed emperor of the world. But before that, they had to take Gamla. So in 66, early 67, they took a lot of towns of northern Galilee, including Jotapata. They very easily took Sepphoris because the people of Sepphoris surrendered immediately as soon as they saw Roman troops. They weren't going to make the mistake of their grandparents and see the town ruined. Then they moved down to Tiberias, and there was a great battle in Tiberias, which the Romans, it's actually a sea battle. People went out on ships and tried to take the Romans on ships, thinking the Romans would know how to fight. The Romans knew how to fight from ships. It didn't fare well at all. But there was this annoying town everyone had heard of, Gamla. The claim was that it was inviolable. It was in the north of Galilee, and so they made their way here. First, Herod Agrippa II. This is the son of Herod Agrippa I. Was sent to try as a Jewish king to soften the people of Gamla and convince them through sweet talk and persuasion to surrender to Rome, because there was no hope that they could hold out. And we know that Agrippa came here with a smallish force of 3,000 or so people, and he stood here and looked over them, and they could tell who it was, and he went down the way that we're going to go down, to the base down there, just below the tower that I pointed out, and started to speak to them. My friends, we cannot beat Rome. No doubt God has destined Rome to rule the world. And as he was mid-speech, someone got a great big oh, the king. Got a little hurty elbow. And he scurried back with his pencil out. That must have been so embarrassing. He had assured the Romans he could convince them, he could talk them down, and he didn't. So then the Romans were fed up, and Vespasian decided to come visit him. This is the lord of the Roman armies, soon to be emperor, 2 years of the emperor, and he came with 3 legions. 3 legions just to take a town of 10,000. And it refers to a lot of people. But usually it refers to between 5,000 and 7,000 soldiers, not including horsemen. So he comes with 3 legions and an additional cohort of horsemen. You might think, what would horsemen do here? These were Roman horses. They did, in fact, use the horses. 3 legions come with Vespasian. Can you imagine him standing over the city and working out what to do? 1 legion set up right where you are. They set up camp. They took their time, because Agrippa had taken 7 months to convince them and try and take the town, and it failed. Right, this is right up to September 67. So Vespasian arrives in October. He surveys, sets up 1 legion up here, 1 legion on the grass area right down here below us, and the other legion was tasked with surrounding the whole mountain and setting up the earthworks and the walls so no one could escape, and setting up pretend platforms. I mean, the Roman engineers, basically engineering, just setting up dirt platforms so that they could move in their giant battering rams, bigger than this building around. Just slowly, patiently. Very intimidating. Then, on a certain day, no doubt, when the sacred chickens had said it was good, you know, the priest, the Roman priest, will have cut open the chicken. They go, oh, this day, Lord Vespasian, I think today is the day, they would have all of a sudden started with the ballistas, catapults, with huge rocks this size, covered in tar and lead, and just catapult, ballista, catapult, ballista, softening the whole thing up. Now, and then it would have been the archers. All of a sudden, the people down there in Gamla would have just had thousands of arrows raining down on them. Thousands of them. We know because we've found thousands of arrows. And they're in the museum. You're going to go and inspect after this, assuming we have time. We're going to see ballista balls, arrows, spears, swords, crushed helmets. Once they'd softened them up, they moved the legions down, prepared the battering rams, giant battering rams, and at that breach in the wall that I pointed out, which some of us will jump through in a moment, they battered through that amazing wall and then started pouring. You must have been terrified. Obviously, the families were huddled up as far up the mountain as they possibly could, and the fighting men just greeted the Romans right there at the breach. It would have got to fists. That's that close battle. It's daggers, it's fists, it's anything you do, it's rocks. The Romans poured in and started making their way in classic Roman formation up the hill. But we're told that halfway up the hill, just the sheer number of Jewish soldiers bearing down the hill meant that the momentum of the Romans going up the hill was very difficult. And it turned out that the Jews were able to start pressuring the Romans down. And once there was a little bit of pressure down, you start to fall. People start to fall. Romans start to terribly retreat. And we're told that what they did to retreat, because there were so many of them behind, they climbed up on top of the houses. All the houses that went up the hill. And then at one point, the houses started to collapse like dominoes, one after another, with Romans inside the houses, on top of the houses, and the rubble and dust was extraordinary. Apparently, thousands died in that first attempt, to the point where the Romans had to back out through the breach and run away. But before they ran away, before they were all out, it turns out Vespasian had been up the very top himself. This is always how he fought, with his crack squad around him. And he realized that all these soldiers had run away. What do you do? There's one Roman tactic that proved very successful in exactly this situation.
Decimation.
What?
Decimation.
It's called the tortoise.
Yeah.
His crack squad immediately surround Vespasian, and as they've done 1,000 times in practice, they lock their shields down like this. They crouch with their shield up to here, and then the one behind has his shield up like this, and then another one with a shield up like this, and another one over here with a shield like this, shield like this, shield like this. They've created a tank, Roman shield, with Vespasian tucked in the middle. And then, as they've done in drills many times, they back down. All the way down from the top to the bottom. As Jews are throwing rocks at them, just jumping on them. But these soldiers, they have locked shields. Really, the only way to get them is to be able to cut their feet. They got out. They got out the breach. Vespasian dusts himself off. They get to a safe distance, because the Jews have archers and spear warriors. They get a safe distance. Vespasian gives them a good talking to. We have a, I'm not going to say imaginative, we have a fairly good account, because remember, Josephus is with Vespasian. So he knows the details. Vespasian's speech was, men, we have to accept this as what sometimes happens in war with lost fellows. But the reason we just lost is because we did the most un-Roman thing imaginable. We lost our temper. We are Romans. And he said, the weakness of the Jews is their passion. And we forgot that we are Romans. We stopped formation. We let our hot heads get the better of us. We're going to do it again. Are you with me? Of course. They are with the great Vespasian. They loved him. This is a man who was ahead of all of the soldiers. And after the speech, he said, okay, let's take our time. They spent the next several weeks preparing more battering rams, having engineering discussions, very important engineering discussions, planning how they would fight next time, now that they know the terrain. And then he said, now's the day. And the next part of the story, I'm going to tell you down the bottom.
Right.
כי יצפנני בסוכו ביום רע יסתרני בסתר אהלו בצור ירוממני ואתה ירום ראשי על אויבי סביבותי ואעז בך ויהונו זבחי תרועה אשירה ואזמרה לאדוני.
One legion is where you are. Spread out over here. They have artificially built up this to make it a more level platform, to make it an easier reach of the wall, etc. Holding the first stage of the battle through that breach right there. I was going to walk through that breach. We got the steps. Let's do it, Roman style.
Yeah.
And as you get up, imagine people fighting for their families against you. They would do anything to keep you out. And when you get up, you actually discover it was pretty physically arduous just to get up there, let alone hold your shield and your sword at the same time. So I'm not saying feel sympathetic for the Roman soldiers. Do have a sense of the terrifying fighting machine they were. So they lost the first phase. These legions hadn't had a battle that went this way for years. And they were furious. And the honor shame culture of the Mediterranean meant that they would give this everything. They probably were simultaneously overconfident and full of passion, as Vespasian was our passion. This time, they weren't overconfident. They had lost a couple of thousand of their own brothers in arms. Now they were going to take it with due Roman seriousness, with the elite engineering skills, with the correct formations, keeping passions at bay, simply to destroy this city that had held out for now 9 months. So Vespasian had a crack team of engineers. He sent a very small team, think of them as a SAS unit or a SEAL unit. They're fighting soldiers, but they're also engineers. And in the night, in the still of the night, stealthy, they go up to that tower, which is now reconstructed. But you've got to imagine it about 5 times higher. They've reconstructed it with the stones that they found around. And Josephus tells us that the engineers found 3 very large stones that they predicted would cause it to fall, but only in an hour or 2. They didn't want to do it immediately. And they, somehow, without anyone in the city hearing them, these engineers brought out these big stones that they predicted were the holding stones of the tower. And then they just crept back, and every soldier was ready for the call. And in the middle of the night, all of a sudden, where those folks are right now, the entire thing just fell. A massive thud, terrifying thud. And then the Roman call came, and the remaining soldiers. We're still probably talking 15,000 soldiers still. A group of 400 horsemen as well. Got up through bridge. I don't believe the horses got through. Dogs got up the bridge, take the lower city, the middle city, and the tower had been destroyed well enough. The soldiers just pour into there. So they had it at least 3 points. And they killed everyone they found. And this meant a rapid and furious retreat on the part of the Jewish freedom fighters. They crept to the top of the hill where we're going to walk eventually. And Josephus says a massive wind storm came in that blew up the hill. And so it's actually perfectly advantageous to the Romans to just sent the archers, and Josephus says that the arrows were sent upwards to the top of the hill as if there was a divine will behind them. All hope was lost. And these Jewish freedom fighters who knew the story of the Maccabees, who knew the story of King David, who believed God was going to come to their rescue, that they were going to defeat the Romans, they were going to establish the kingdom of God, realized that this wasn't going to be the moment. So they started rushing up the hill, finding their women and their children, the precipice. And as shocking as it is to us to hear all these years later, they threw their loved ones off the precipice. Because they knew what the Romans would do to them. I mean, I don't know what I would do. I mean, we shake our heads and think, how could they do that? But if you know that your 2-year-old child is going to now have a life of brutal slavery, that your lovely wife has given you your 5, 6, 7 children is going to be taken and dealt with as these soldiers wanted, I don't know what I'd do. But we know what they did. They threw them off the precipice, and then they apparently just started jumping themselves. And Josephus says that while 4,000 were killed in battle of Gamla, 5,000 died jumping to their death. And thus Gamla was taken. The Romans would have then left a mop-up crew as they then just turned to the next business. That's the end of November AD. And the site lay in complete ruins, and the dirt of time covered this site until the late 60s, early 70s, when it was discovered. And the archaeology they've done, they are still doing 4 or 5 decades later, has uncovered, as I said, ballistas, arrows, spears, swords, coins. You'll see the coins that were minted here by the Jewish freedom fighters. And on them, they wrote, "Year 1 of the redemption of Zion." That's how convinced they were going to be.
Wow.
No, wait a minute.
Swinging.
Wait a minute, John. Let's see you do it the way you do in the video. Come on, Vespasian.
I do it every year.
He's Vespasian. He's
Kill them, Noah! Get him!
Now, who wants to be next?
Ellie!
because he's going to
Okay, right. Now, without doing anything, I want you to look very intimidating. You're a Jewish freedom fighter. You are there to stop the Romans coming. Right?
Put the glasses on.
He's got a
And it's just acting. Now you're all Roman soldier, but he's a freedom fighter. He's got his family up there. He's not letting you up.
Game over.
Just look intimidating. Please don't do anything intimidating. Oh my goodness. Yeah, absolutely. You're a goner. You would not have made it. All right? But eventually, after. Oh, hang on. He's got to help him. Oh no.
He's got a soldier with him now.
There's the rabbi. The rest of you, please take the stairs. Unless you really want to. Wait to the end of the sentences.
Charge!
Gabby? Do I need to do it again?
I got it. Thank you. Did you say some of this is reconstructed?
I said that about the tower.
Yeah, that's not 50. If you go and look at
The highest thing that we've seen so far.
They eventually find their way, but they also start popping on the houses. Now, when the houses are safe, so just the way we've got these two houses.
And then you have all these guys throwing stuff down on you. Okay.
That is amazing.
It's extraordinary what they've found on this site. As we get deeper into where I'm going to take you, it's more the olive press and the flour mill. We'll see pottery, bits of pottery everywhere. Probably not on the not much. And you know the one telling you Australians must. I have had groups participating. Serious. One of them happens to be on tour right now. So just out of interest, look out.
Go back this way.
I'm not advising. And but it's fun because the thing is, because this is frozen in time, that everything here was here before November AD 67.
Wow.
The apostles are still running around doing their thing. In everything you find on the ground.
Shmarona kuliekra vechoneni va'aneni Shmarona kuliekra vechoneni va'aneni חשוב עיניי את פניך אדוני אבקש תסתיר פניך ממני, אל תעבב עבדך. עזרתי היית, אל תתלשני, ואל תעזבני, אלוהי שלי. כי אבי ואמי עזבוני, ואדוני יאספני. כי אבי ואמי עזבוני, ואדוני יאספני. הורני אדוני דרכך, ונחני באורח מישור. הורני אדוני דרכך, ונחני באורח מישור. למען שוררי, למען שוררי, אל תתנני בנפש זרי, כי קמו וידשך ויפח חמאס.
Zealots are basically Pharisees with a military theology laid over, especially here at Gamla, the birthplace of that. They were pious. You don't simply think of them as crazy terrorists or anything like that. You must think of them as oppressed peoples with a theology that says this land is ours and we have to do something to take it back. I think it's an entirely understandable motif. We know that they minted coins here. They minted it in the year 66 when the war broke out. And we'll see some of those coins at the museum. And they say year one of the redemption of Jerusalem. They were all about the northern protection of Jerusalem. That's how they thought. When the war really breaks out in 66, early 67, and Jotapata falls, and Sepphoris falls, and Tiberias falls, they all flock, people flock here to Gamla. They've heard it's an impenetrable town, and they know that there's piety here, so maybe there is protection here as well. I've already explained, Agrippa couldn't take it in 7 months, took the Romans 2 months, but in November 57, they took the city of the But I can't help thinking about Jesus when I come to this place. Because there's no better place for you to hear the teachings of Jesus about what the kingdom of God is like than in this place where they thought the kingdom of God would come in a tornado of military victory against them. Because between Judas of Gamla and the outbreak of the war 60 years later, Jesus is traveling throughout the towns of Galilee preaching in the synagogue. And with that in mind, I want you just to let your historical imagination run wild now. I read you just a selection of teachings from Jesus scattered across the Gospel. And I want you to imagine Jesus coming here one day. Gamblans all around. He's a famous rabbi. But he preaches a very different kind of kingdom. Imagine him preaching like this. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children. If someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to them the other also. If someone forces you to go 1 mile, which was a Roman occupation rule,
ask anyone to carry 1 mile. If someone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemy. Pray for those who mistreat you. Bless those who curse you. What shall I say the kingdom of God is like? What parable shall I use to describe our shared longing for the kingdom? It is like a mustard seed. It's the smallest seed on earth. Yet when it is planted, it grows and becomes the largest of the garden plants with such big branches that birds can perch in its shade. Truly, I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom. Therefore, whoever takes the lowly position of this child, they will be the greatest in the kingdom of God. Whoever wants to become great, I know you have a great history here, must become your servant. Whoever wants to be first among you must be the slave of all of you. For even I, Son of Man, did not come to be served by you, but to serve you and give my life as a ransom for many. Is it likely the people of Gamla heard these teachings? Very. Maybe some were convinced. I think we can say confidently the majority of the town was not. Because in 30 years they would lead this resistance against Rome. Just let your imagination run wild with those words. Then oh.
Hello.
Nice.
Hello, you stinking Romans.
That's rolling, not in the sun anymore.
Yeah, and I didn't.
Rolly. Okay, so
Some of us will go up to the high point there.
and then we're going to come back, and I'm going to do the final reading upon this rock here. Cool. Okay, so those of you who just want to stay here, you won't miss the reading. Is that okay? But we will be 20 minutes. Maybe 15.
Maybe 10.
10.
Take 5.
Yeah. Let's run it.
What would you like to do? Do you want to stay here?
Yeah, yeah.
We go up to the
Lule e monti, lule e monti, lule e monti, lirot betuvar unai be'aretz kaim. Lule e monti, lule e monti, lule e monti, lirot betuvar unai be'aretz kaim. Chazak, chazak, kaveh shall I be afraid? La 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 la. I will not worry. Loira, no fear.
Proceed reporting the two women's rights only to be taken into slavery. From here.
Henry? Okay, guys, don't go any further.
All right. Can you hear me fine?
Yep.
Gamla did not accede relied upon the difficulty of the place, for it was situated upon a rough ridge of a high mountain, a kind of neck in the middle. It's like a camel, from whence its name. On its slope, which is straight, houses are built. They are very thick and close to one another. So strangely that it looks as though it would down upon itself, so sharp. And only 50 meters back that way, you were walking over little stones that were the remains of houses. Very big. So the city was naturally very taken. Inside of it, made of more, made more by the nature. Then he goes on to tell me that. Now this upper part of the city was every way and elevated to such a vast altitude and very full of people on. They did so much mischief to others by their darts and the large stones which they rolled down upon the Romans, while they themselves were so high that the enemy's darts could hardly reach them. However, there arose such a storm against them as was instrumental to their destruction. This carried the Roman darts upon them, nor could the Jews stand upon the precipices by reason of the violence of the wind, having nothing that was stable to stand upon, nor could they see those that were ascending up below them. So the Romans got up, surrounded them, and some they slew before they could defend themselves. And the remembrance of those that were slain at first, that first unsuccessful entrance into the city, increased the Roman rage against them now. A great number also of those that were surrounded on every side despaired of even escaping. So they threw their children and their wives, and then also themselves, down the precipice into the valley beneath. The Romans slew about 4,000, but the number of those that threw themselves down was about 5,000. And thus was Gamla taken. And I put it to you that any long-term Gamla resident that was in their 50s had heard Jesus in the synagogue. And when I'm here, I find myself wondering, if those 50-somethings
were thinking to themselves, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they are the children of God. Love your enemy, do good to those who persecute you. Should we have listened? Maybe some of